The Joe Rogan Experience.
It's the really fucked up part about it is it's almost like what we were talking about with football, that football would be safer if there was no helmets. It doesn't make sense.
And drugs would be safer if they
we
were
would all
regulated.
be safer if they were legal.
I feel that way about prostitution.
Yeah.
And I'm going to actually broach this here. I was going to write a joke about it. I'm just going to say it. I believe a state issued, if you apply for funding, for support, if you're going to school, like a loan, or the state's paying for you to go to school, you get a scholarship, you should also be able to apply for a state issued prostitute. If you are a little socially awkward, maybe you haven't had sex, because men get weird if they haven't been made privy to the way a woman is, or they haven't had sex and you're going to college. Let's get you a prostitute. Let's get you having sex twice a week so you're not afraid of women. Let's get you a little less weird. Let's fund a prostitute.
Well, I think if it didn't have the social stigma behind it, there's a lot of people that would choose it over working at Wendy's.
Great.
There's a lot of people that choose it. But
As
we
long
have
as
an
it's a
issue.
choice.
The social stigma is that there's something wrong with it, right?
But that's because it's a woman saying, I want to do this with my body. That's what's upsetting.
It's sort of that, but it's also, well, in this country, it's also connected to sex slavery. We think of it as like if someone is doing that, then maybe they're a sex slave. Like maybe there's someone who's...
I think that's less on people's radars, and it more has to do with the puritanical idea of
There's a little bit of
shaming.
that, but I mean, that was one of the things that they were accusing Robert Kraft of. You remember Robert Kraft, who's the guy who owns the Croft or Kraft? It's Kraft, right? He's the guy who owned the New England Patriots. He went to a massage parlor and they gave him a happy ending, and then the next thing you know, they arrested him and told him that there's a video of it.
Right.
And they were, they're trying to get him to plead guilty and all this different shit that was going on to a guy who's like insanely wealthy, who just was going there to get jerked off. But one of the things they said was that it was that he was participating somehow in sex trafficking, and so they were accusing him of that. That was a big part of what the police were saying. Well, it turned out that none of the girls that worked there were sex traffickers. They're just prostitutes. And the woman that did it to him, she was like 40 years old.
But none of this would have happened if it was legal.
None of it would have happened if it was legal. But
and
it's
okay.
also they were using that term. They were accusing him of this thing and using that term like to brand him.
Wait,
this
are you
way,
telling me that
to shame him?
there was a news story where they used a buzzword?
Yes. Yeah, it is a buzzword.
Right.
But it's a buzzword it's very specific in terms of like the difference in the consequences that you would want someone to face, whether they just went there to get jerked off
Sure.
or they participated in sex slavery.
Right, you're not a part of a ring. I mean,
Right.
you are, because the ring ends with you. So because there's a demand for it, there is a supply. So that is by and large a part of the issue. And I say this not knowing a ton about sex slavery, but I do know that if you take away the stigma, and you can normalize things very quickly. Weed is a great example, right?
Yeah.
You could do that. And even we've done this with women and bodies and the way that we look at people who are overweight and we look at people with different things. Like we are getting to a place where it's less of a thing. I think you could do that with prostitution.
I think so too.
And it's fine. And look at it as like this is her choice. And
Yeah.
if there wasn't an exceptional, exorbitant demand for it, it wouldn't be a thing.
At this point in time, it has never been a better time to be alive for humans than today. Not saying that it can't get better, but we have made tremendous progress by, on one hand, imagining things that don't exist yet, so inventing technologies and also inventing institutions. And on the other hand, our human ability to collaborate effectively in large numbers, which includes the corporation, which is a very effective way for people to work together. Now, all that progress has also had its negative side effects, which are most pronounced, of course, in the area of the environment, where we put things into an environment that shouldn't belong there, and we take too much out of it than nature can replenish, which includes the fish, and on the other hand, you have the plastic going into the environment, etc. So then the question is, well, how do we solve that? And of course, one hand is to say, okay, it's kind of maybe the Luddite is maybe a bit of a negative way to phrase it, but the sort of reactionary approach of saying, okay, we should consume less, corporations are bad, technology is bad, we should all get rid of all those things. And I think the environment, the modern environmental movement, which is really kind of this romantic movement, has this image of back in the day, everything was great and we lived in harmony with nature. So let's get rid of all this modernity and try and return to that pure original state. What I, however, believe is that, first of all, that's I don't think it's a very realistic thing. People want to keep their iPhones and their cars, and people want to move forward. And at the same time, I don't think it's really the most effective way to solve these problems, because it would be like fighting a leopard tank with bow and arrow. Technology is nothing more than an enabler of human capabilities. It enhances our power. So why not use that power to also try and solve these problems as well? So rather than try and reject business, reject technology, I truly believe that we should embrace those forces that make us human and has created this amazing world, to also try and solve these negative side effects as well. And that's why I believe the overconsumption of fish is not going to end by people all becoming vegan, but rather through fake meat. I think that the transport emissions are not going to be solved by people not flying anymore or not going anywhere anymore. Realistically, people are going to fly more, so we better invent technologies that allow people to do that without harming the environment. And the same thing, I think, would be the case for plastic and really other energy uses as well.
To some extent?
Yeah, 100%. I think you gotta have it. Like, everybody keep telling me, oh, you got. It's just like knockout power. Like, you can't build it, but some people just have it. Like, I was talking to my friends. Like I got a little Japanese friend. He's with me on my corner all the time. My wrestling coach. He helped me out a lot. Michael Nakagawa. And I tell him all the time, like, this dude is a little 125 pound. 115 pound guy. Pretty much a little girl. I tell him all the time. I'm like, you're a little girl, but. If anything, like, there was this one time we was out and about, and this guy was just acting crazy. This is like couple years back, and I was at the UFC, but we was at one of the UFC events. I forget what event we was at, but we was doing something. It was a big thing, and we was at a party, and then this one Asian dude was just like getting all crazy in people's faces, like crazy drunk, and blah blah, getting in his face. And this is how hard my friend punches. I tell him, guy, I would crack him, but I'm scared I'm not going to put him to sleep. I know if you punch him, he's going to go knock out. So you go hit him. And he wouldn't hit him, though. He wouldn't hit him, but he punches so hard. Like, he's the smallest guy in our group. Like, even one time we was at home in Waikiki walking, and there's this drunk guy. And there's like five of us, and he's the smallest guy in the back. And we're all walking in like almost a line. And this big guy, he slips everybody. Little guy last, he bumps him hard, and I look at him. I'm like, what are you? And then he goes to the little guy. He turns to my friend and be like, what? And my friend goes, what? And then he's like, oh, okay, nothing. And he walks away. And then I told him. And then I told we was hanging with this new guy. This guy was just hanging out with us. I told him, that is the wrong guy to bump into, because out of everyone here, he probably one punch knock you out, and he's the smallest guy. This is it. I think it's just genetics.
Punching power is definitely a genetic thing. That's super dicey.
Yeah.
Well, didn't they do that with an African man in the Bronx Zoo in like the turn of the century?
They put an African man in the Bronx Zoo?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they had an African man, I believe it was the Bronx Zoo, in
goodness.
like the 1800s or the early 1900s.
Pygmy.
A pygmy?
Yeah, Bada Benga,
What year was it?
1906.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Yeah, they had him in the zoo, man.
It's insane.
Look at that.
Wow.
Dude's in the zoo. Yeah. Well, you know what, man? People were just figuring life out back then.
Right.
This is the reality of human beings, is that we have not been alive that long,
Right.
and we have not been civilized in terms of how we view the world today, with inclusivity and objectivity and care and kindness towards others, like this compassion and altruism.
Mm-hmm.
This is on a global scale. This is fairly recent.
Yeah, we're figuring things out as we
Yeah.
go. I mean, the history is it can show you how we've progressed. You know, it's a documentation of how we've progressed.
But yet still, that was
Still fucked up.
50 years after slavery.
Yeah.
Right?
That's crazy.
Yeah. 40, 45 years after slavery. What the fuck, guys?
So Bronx Zoo, speaking in our like weird cryptid realm, reminded me of something. So get this. Chupacabra has been attributed to the possibility that there are thylacine in North America. And here's what supports that. There is documented proof that however many years ago, I don't remember the dates, there were two breeding pair of thylacine. bound for the Bronx Zoo. And the boat crashed into the shore, and most of the animals escaped, including the 2 breeding pair of thylacine. Fast forward 10, 15 years, you start having these chupacabra sightings pop up in the Northeast. And these animals were adapted to living in Tasmania, which is a pretty similar climate to the North American Northeast. And so there's people that have kind of drawn these parallels and said, oh, the chupacabra that we've reported running around, the United States is actually a tiny remnant population of these thylacine that were brought here for the Bronx Zoo that escaped.
What? You buy into this?
No. Not
Sounds
personally,
good though, right?
but it's an amazing story.
You had me. If you said yes, I'm ready to go on an expedition.
A quick question off of stuff you've talked about. If someone could get one for the Bronx Zoo, then would a rich person have been able to buy one, like a rich guy in Texas, for instance?
A thylacine?
Been able to purchase one privately?
Yeah. Back
Texas, you could probably get one today. If you want to find a thylacine, go to Bubba's house.
Right.
Yeah.
But especially back then, there were no like import-export laws about wildlife. You could just bring in whatever you liked if you had money. What's to say? Everybody was in a race to collect stuff for zoos and museums. Like, what's to say somebody didn't bring some in?
There were all these sort of new Nietzsche. Marx, who said God is dead, or Nietzsche said God is dead, but Marx basically said religion is the opium of the masses. Human beings are the masters of their own fate. And all of these guys who basically took God out of the equation, and all of them were basically saying that we are animals, and God is no longer here. We're animals, and if you don't create a society to control our animalistic impulses, we're going to fucking slaughter and rape each other. And World War I proved all of those guys right, basically. But it was a time when everything was up in the air. Einstein comes along and says, time and space, not so fast. It's actually relative. And everybody went, what? Huh? He goes, yeah, time doesn't exist like a stopwatch. God didn't start a stopwatch, and that's what Newton said. But actually,
good luck trying to work your way through that.
You can't.
The one where
it confused everybody.
If you go fast enough into space and then come back, everybody here will be old and you'll be the same age.
Do you know how that works?
Yeah, I do. But it's still like, what?
It's really weird. Do you know, I think this is true. This is what I read. He was walking, he was like in, where was he? CERN, Switzerland, or where the fuck it is. He gets off he's trying to come up with these, he's thinking about the theory of relativity or whatever. And he gets off the train and he's walking away from the train station. He turns and looks at the clock, and the clock says, let's say 6 o'clock. He turns and looks at the clock, and he turns back around and he stops and he goes, wait, hold on. I was walking away from the clock. So when I saw the clock, it said 6. But that's how long it took the light to get to my eye. By the time the light hit my eye, it was actually later. Because the light has to hit my eye for me. Do you understand?
Right, a fraction of a second later.
So he said, what if I was moving at the speed of light? Time would stand still.
Dun, dun, dun.
Because the light would never hit my eye. It's a weird thing to say, but I was like, that's a fucking...
Yeah, but I wonder if that works with biological aging. I wonder if biological aging is on a constant, right?
Oh, that's interesting, yeah. Entropy, right?
Well, I know that like time would be different, right? But I wonder, like when you say time stands still, but it's got to exist if you're alive. It's got to exist somehow biologically. Your body's not going to stop heart beating and breathing, right? Yeah. So like how many heartbeats do you have in you? I mean, that's part of what life is. Life is like you got a limited number of heartbeats if you wanted to really break it down.
Right.
Like how many of them are you going to use while you're going through light speed? Those don't count?
I know.
Your heart's going to beat, right?
Right.
So how long is it actually going to take in real time down on Earth while you're up there?
I don't know.
I think it's going to be like where you're moving so fast that it feels like 10 minutes because it is 10 minutes to you. And then you come back. You've only aged 10 minutes, but it might be 10 years down here.